Hi, everyone. I'm really excited today to have our guest, Mari Ström, on the podcast. Mari is based in Seattle and heads up marketing for Canopy, a data composability platform for back-end engineers. Mari, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your current role?
Sure. Great to be here. Thanks, Lewis. Let's see. I consider myself a entrepreneurial SaaS marketer. So I started my career in the startup space. Very much enjoyed it. That's why I've never left. I think maybe you have to be a little bit crazy to be in this space, but I'd say I have some broad and deep experience creating innovative revenue building, acquisition, and demand gen programs that really help to launch some of these startups and these brands and to help them create these profitable growth strategies so that they can develop new markets and they can drive revenue and growth. One thing I want to say is that when you work in the startup space, you have this ability to, because you're doing everything right at the very beginning, and you're building out these these programs and these teams. You have the ability to understand all the marketing disciplines and how they work together. Frankly, because you're forced to. So it's really enabled me to grow very fast in my roles and in my career. Currently, I head up marketing for a company called Canopy. We are a new startup that launched back in November. Canopy is a data composability platform that's built for back-end engineers that helps them save massive amounts of time and simplify the operations around data integration. And like I said, we just came out of stealth a couple months ago. My responsibility is to support our go-to-market strategy and drive demand and awareness with the right messaging and channels.
That's exciting. So you definitely have your work cut out for you.
I do. Yeah.
So, that was a great introduction. One of the major themes on this podcast is basically kind of channeling what leaders out in the world do to become successful and to continue that success. And so kind of over that your journey, what are some of the tricks of the trade that you've learned that have made you so successful?
Let's see. I think one of the tricks of the trade, or just some of the things that are like really, really important to know and to understand, is truly your audience. Who are you marketing to? Who are you selling to? And you'll often hear this in product marketing, which is like understanding the customer voice and having that customer voice and to be able to understand their pain points so that you can deliver value to them. You're not selling a product, it's about delivering value. And when you understand your audience and what it is they're trying to solve, the problems they're trying to solve and their pain points, you can then deliver very crisp messaging. It helps you to understand, like, how do you message the value that you deliver? How do you message the value that your product gives? And I think those are really like very important things to understand. And it's not a trick really, but it's more like it's a necessity. And I think, again, going back and understanding who that audience isn't about like doing research through Google. It's really getting to know them, like personally, getting to know the current customers, right? Or lookalike audiences. I think the other thing that's really important, or again, a trade or a craft is to be a successful marketer is to understand data. And back when I was starting my career.
Yeah, I mean, the whole data
Yeah.
piece right now is kind of what, everyone is focusing on just
Yeah.
because data doesn't lie. And marketing has
100%.
there's always been, some level of ambiguity to it. But now, everything is logged. And I think that can actually work in your favor and also against you as a marketer, because there are certain squishy parts of marketing that you can't necessarily tie data to, but
Yeah.
for the most part, there's no arguing with your pipeline metrics, so to
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah, 100%. And I can appreciate the squishy parts. Like I think about analyst relations, super important, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes really hard to measure that, and maybe some forms of advertising, but I would say, like what you guys do, RevSure, you surface a lot of that critical data that is super important for marketers to understand what's happening in their pipeline, to create some predictions, right? so that they can understand where revenue is going to hit, what channels are actually performing best. And like just going back to the basics of data is like understanding. I think it's important for marketers to be able to understand the data so that they can understand their business and they can talk about it to, and defensively, right? You go to your weekly business reviews with your teammates or with your teammates or your leadership team, and being able to go bring to the table the data and the performance and help them understand where marketing dollars are performing or not performing, but then also giving them confidence that like, okay, these channels are working, or if these channels aren't working, we're going to divest and reinvest them into other channels. So, but it just, data is like that North Star to help you as a marketer understand what do you do next. And if you don't understand data and you don't understand like how to read a dashboard, which is very simple, I think all marketers can now, then you'll be lost. You'll be lost.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, and the other part of it is trying to uncover data that might not be as easily accessible. You talk about
Yes.
trying to map a customer journey, and you're talking
Yeah.
about where, all the different signals. I mean, all the rage right now is trying to unpack intent, trying to figure out what's
Yeah.
happening that you can't track that's not within your map or CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that whole component too.
Yep.
I think along those lines of using data to make better decisions for marketing, what do you think makes a great marketing campaign?
Oh gosh, this is a big question, a loaded question, because there's a lot of different things that make a great marketing campaign. But I would say campaigns that tell a story that's relatable and unforgettable are the best campaigns. And I think we've seen those campaigns, right? I mean, I think Apple tells a great story that's relatable, I think Google does, right? And so while originality is a must, the best share many of the same elements, in the story. So again, it goes back to your audience, right? So again, it's got to be a relatable story. So as it talking to your audience, is there like a memorable hook that you can understand? And I think Apple and Google and Microsoft and Meta do those things really well. And those campaigns can drive, if it's a relatable story and it has that hook that's connecting with your audience, it could drive like tremendous brand awareness, and enable your audience to respond to your call to action. That has to be really authentic, but I think that would make a huge impact in how your campaign performs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no arguing that Apple is one
I
of the
think
masters of
you
creating
froze.
an incredible advertising campaign. I mean, even I'm not sure if you've watched any of their keynotes recently, but they're big into like the health things now. So they'll have, they're highlighting all of the health features of their Apple Watch and like
Mm-hmm.
lives that have been saved, and it's kind of, it's funny. It brings that whole adage of like, we're not saving lives. And now Apple, a giant tech company, is actually saving lives with some of their tech gadgets. So it's,
Yeah.
it's entertaining to think about that.
And I think when you're and just like going back to the Apple thing, sorry, I think we
Yeah.
broke up. So, but I'd say that when like with Apple, when you're telling a story, like there's so much value there and you don't feel like you're being sold to. You know what I mean? And I think there's a lot of good B2B SaaS companies that do the same thing. It's about solving the problem, right? And solving that pain point rather than selling a feature and marketing a feature. So
Yeah. Everyone knows that brand is super important, but when you're talking about a startup, where does that come into play and how do you invest and what are some of the things that you do to help bolster that brand awareness at these early stage companies?
yeah, I think, then it's funny that you say that because as a startup marketer myself right now, it's like I'm having to choose which path to take, right? Brand versus demand. And right now, no one knows who we are. We're a brand, we're a new brand, right? Um, but we need demand and we need to drive pipeline. At the end of the day, like I've got to focus on driving revenue, right? And so when I think about the importance of driving that demand, we need to be able to have brand is super important because it's overarching. It helps to legitimize the value that you're bringing to your customer, what your platform does. At the end of the day, what it solves for, whether that's a developer or a marketer or a salesperson. I would say that, brand is, when you're thinking about brand at an early stage, thinking about it should really be about what is the value that you deliver, how do you solve that problem, right? And I think that in the early stage is how you can then deliver some legitimacy behind the platform that you're delivering, whether it's Rupture, whether it's Canopy, is, I think, being able to give value and deliver that and solve that problem will help build your brand in the beginning. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's spot on. I
Yeah.
think that you need to first, if no one knows who you are, you need to talk about, what problem are you solving? How did they
Yeah.
fit within your tech stack or whatever they
Yeah.
may be doing? And then once you can accomplish that, it kind of becomes a snowball and it all
Yeah,
adds up.
exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's something that as a startup marketer, you're always it's always a battle you're having
Yeah.
with how to invest and what do you expect the action to be.
Yeah. And I think the thing with the, brand at an early stage is like, you've got to build that trust, right? Again, no one knows who you are. So you've got to figure out, how do you translate like that into trust so that, again, they can feel confident about the investment that they're making, that it's adding. Again, I keep going back to value. Like, is it freeing up time for my marketers? Is it giving my developers, support and visibility, observability, into their connections? I don't know, whatever that is.
Yeah. There's a couple things there. It's like the whole old saying, no one gets fired for buying IBM, right? Is that,
Yeah.
what's it now? Would it be nobody gets fired for buying maybe Microsoft?
Yeah.
I don't know.
AWS.
But,
Yeah.
if people are putting their neck out there, if they're making an investment in your technology or software, there's a line item and they have to say, okay, I'm confident that I'm going to get an ROI from this and we're going to build a
Yes.
business case around it.
Yeah.
And then the other part of it is, the trust credibility factor. Who's, how are you doing that? Is it through case studies, reviews? Is it through word of mouth? Like, it's all hugely important for any startup right now. So shifting gears a bit, one of the things that we like to surface on the RevTalks podcast is just kind of making listeners aware of some of the influential marketers out there or leaders, and maybe they should be paying attention to them, following them on LinkedIn. And I'm really curious to hear if there's any of those folks that have impacted you over your career.
Yeah, I would say this guy's pretty well known, and maybe someone would say like, "Oh, he's so basic." Sorry if you hear this podcast and I called you basic. Simon Sinek. Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
So
I follow him.
everybody knows who he is. Leaders Eat Last. Great read for anyone trying to improve on their leadership qualities, and in return improve their organizations. And the reason why he's made such an impact to me is because I actually had a mentor of mine, who I felt really embodied the Leaders Eat Last like concept. His name is Matt Shanahan. He's a product and marketing leader from several companies that I worked at, and just a great leader and mentor to me, and really helped me build my career and also our teams as we work together. But I'd say, with Simon Sinek, he really talks about building a strong and inspiring team. And the big thing around that is creating this supportive work environment, right? Supporting your team, building them up, empowering them, and giving them an environment where they can thrive. And I think that is super important. I mean, when I think about what makes teams great, I mean, obviously you got to hire really great talent, but you need to build a safe environment and a supportive work environment where they can feel like they can experiment and that they can thrive, right? So, it kind of goes back to a little bit of, I hate this concept, but the whole like growth mindset. but it makes sense, right? And growth mindset is all around, enabling yourself to test the waters and not be afraid of failing. And, you hear the concept like fail fast, right?
I was
I
just gonna
love
say.
that. Yeah. And I mean, you have to do that in a startup. That's what you're doing. You're constantly failing, especially if you're a marketer or a revenue marketer. Again, there's no silver bullet. There's no silver bullet that will drive revenue the best. It is a combination of a number of different channels, and we all know that, right? And it's all testing. And if it doesn't work, then you divest and you invest in something new, right? But you need to have a environment that enables you to do that, right? Otherwise, you see these teams that they have analysis for paralysis, right? And they get stifled and they can't move forward. And I think some of the great companies that we see out there that have been able to grow really fast, like Drift or HubSpot, like they've been able to do that through these environments that enable them to fail fast and learn and move on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much there. The whole paralysis situation that could set in. I mean, that's a very real thing. You have so much to do, and it's even having a manager that can help you prioritize
Yeah,
is huge for a lot of folks. And then
yeah,
as it relates to building a great team, giving them that flexibility and knowing that if a mistake is made and you fail fast and you recover from it and you learn from it and you make it a teaching event for the rest of the team. I mean, there's
yeah,
so much value there, and it takes away the pressure, and it just is going to enable people to kind of spread their wings and
for
be
sure.
successful.
Yep.
Um, yeah, I know this is amazing. So we're running out of time here. I always like to ask a couple questions as it relates to things that you're seeing in the market, podcasts that you're listening to, trends that you think people should pay attention to. So current podcast, any that you have recently discovered, or is there one that's on repeat anytime you are in a car or in the morning?
One that's on repeat, not in the car, but like I know this is terrible. Like sometimes if I go for a run or a walk, I'll listen to this, and it's like I should probably just listen to music. But um, so I mentioned Drift, right? So the former CMO of Drift, his name's Dave Gerhardt. He has a really great podcast called B2B Marketing. I forgot what his consultancy is, but it's like his consultancy
Exit
name and like
5.
B2B. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I just love him. He's got a really good like radio voice. So he's fun to listen to and he's super chill. And he's got this charisma, but he brings some really great like headline speakers. And obviously it probably has to do with the fact that he came from Drift and brought that company from 0 to like 8 figures in 4 years. But he brings on some really great SaaS marketing leaders and super inspiring. And then there's a lot of really good practical like how-to content too. Like most recently, I listened to one around attribution, and another one around ABM. So some of the new trends around ABM. Another one is around AI. So, but yeah, I really really like his podcast. He's the one that I might go to. Yeah.
It's funny. I followed Dave Gerhardt for years now, since his days at Drift.
Hmm.
And I follow him on LinkedIn. I read the newsletter from Exit 5 and all that, but I
Hmm.
actually had not listened to his podcast. So
You
I will
should.
definitely add that to my starred podcast and check him out.
They're
I
great.
find myself driving a lot less these days, being at a fully remote organization. So I kind of miss
Hmm.
the being stuck in traffic and being forced to listen to a podcast. So now I do
Yeah.
it when I'm cleaning up dinner and putting dishes in the dishwasher. That's kind of when
Yep.
I have my podcast time these
I know
days.
what that's like. Yep.
You always have to be multitasking. If you can be
Totally.
accomplishing multiple things, you feel less guilty about it because there's not enough hours in the day. So anything you
100%.
can do to make more efficient use of them.
Yep. Yep.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you are busy, and I really appreciate having you on. I think that our listeners are going to really find some value in our discussion, and hopefully, we can have you back on a year from now, and we can pick up from there and see what's going on.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure. And yeah, we'll talk soon.